Welcome to Honest HR, the podcast for informed and aspiring HR professionals. I'm Nicole Villena, your host. Today, we're exploring recruiting and retaining talent through civility. Joining us is Kenston Henderson, Chief Empowerment Officer of Live with Life. Welcome to Honest HR, Kenston.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So to kick things off, tell us a little bit about your HR background and your experience with recruitment and retention.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in HR for over 20 years. And so I know I don't look like it, but I have. And it's been a beautiful experience going from public sector, private sector to even in government during my career. And so having those different opportunities has allowed me to go across recruitment, go across, as a generalist, benefits administration, training and development. So, it's been a beautiful experience. I know where my superpower is not in recruitment, it's in training and development. But I love being able to gift the people that were new hires to make sure they have an incredible experience coming into organizations. So it's kind of my background. I love people.
Well, the talk that you're giving at SHRM's Talent Conference is about attracting and retaining top talent by fostering culture of civility and inclusion. Can you tell us what culture looks like and why it's critical in today's talent landscape?
So to me, culture is the way we do things, our values, our mission. And I truly believe that when I'm working with organizations, some have seemed to lost their way. And because it's a people part of business, different people help the culture either elevate or deflate. And it's just really getting leaders and team members on that same page of making sure that they're creating and cultivating a culture of civility or belonging. So that way people really can be at their best at work. And so I love helping people find that purpose, that repurpose again. So.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And, when you're bringing people into the organization, finding that culture fit is important. And so it's not just about identifying technically talented professionals, but finding people who align with your culture, who are going to add to your culture, and fit with the culture of civility and inclusion that you've mentioned. Can you share an example or two of how a strong, inclusive culture has helped organizations stand out to top talent?
Absolutely. I recall working with a manager who he called me on a 911 emergency. And he called me because he was having issues with his team, and his team was very diverse, meaning he intentionally hired 10 different people from 10 different countries. And I said, well, I see why you have problems, but I laughed it off. I said, so what's going on? And communication is the key. And, from that experience, we did a lot of communication training together with him and his team so that they can at least get on the same page. And once they got on the same page, that's when you've seen their department just rise above every other department because they had skill sets from around the world. And so they were able to embrace each other's unique differences and similarities once they got on the same page. So there's so much power in inclusivity. And so I was glad to be a part of that.
And you brought up a really great point, which is, this person, business owner who reached out to you, hired a diverse team. They came from diverse backgrounds, different ways of doing things, different ways of thinking. So there's the diversity there, but perhaps the inclusion wasn't there, the communication. And so, it was really the identifying how everyone can communicate effectively and foster that inclusive environment. That's the key.
Absolutely. So we definitely went deep in those Myers-Briggs assessments, the different Strength Finders assessments. We did them all because, again, they were such a diverse team that they communicated differently. But again, once we got them on the same page, we were working, moving.
What steps can HR professionals take to evaluate their organization's culture for civility and inclusivity?
Well, when you're starting with recruitment, it's the front door. And so making sure who's ever a part of the recruitment process is aware of the biases that they hold. Biases, as we know, and Sharon done a lot of surveys and studies that it's a $1 billion industry of negative biases at play. And so hiring to make sure that you're hiring leaders, those who are sitting on panels, making sure they are aware of the biases that they hold, and then talk about those biases. And so there's a process with that where once they're assessed, once they know, talk about it, make sure we're addressing those head on. And then being able to make sure that the hiring manager and then the department that the new hires are coming into are ready to receive those new employees, and not make them run out the door. I remember I was doing new hire orientation, and I was talking about forgiveness, and I was telling the new hires, like, hey, you need to make sure you forgive your previous employers or your previous boss. We don't want you to bring that into our organizational culture, because our culture is strong and healthy and thriving. We don't want that. Ugh. But then someone came up to me, running up to me, said, Kinston, I've been here for over 3 weeks before I attended new hire orientation. I said, ooh, that's a problem. One, and two, that they said they were ready to leave the organization. And I said, well, why is that? Well, my department, it's toxic. That means I don't feel supported. I feel judged. I'm bringing positivity into the workplace, but they're not allowing me to be positive. They said, we don't do that here. And so they said they were taken aback. And so they were struggling, right? So that we have to make sure that this workplace is psychologically safe. We got to make sure that people feel like they belong. People are being civil. In order for true civility to take place, true belonging to take place in our workplaces. So, I can't wait to share the 7 keys. I gave you 3, but I'm going to give more in this session for sure.
And so it sounds like you're saying, start from the beginning.
Yeah.
Start from the beginning of the employee life cycle. So not even when they start in onboarding, but even before that, evaluating the hiring process, and then onboarding, something as simple as ensuring a timely onboarding.
Yes. Communicating consistently, not waiting until a month or a week before they have to come into the workplace. That'll help, ease any concerns, but also make sure that they feel like they belong already once you send them that offer letter, for sure.
I think companies can start communicating their culture very early on. So even before the hiring process, in their job descriptions, how they're written, the culture that they want to convey. And then, as you pointed out, keeping that message straight through.
Yes, absolutely. And really, again, just making sure everybody is on board. Because as recruiters, we do our best to attract the best talent, right? But again, we have to hand them off at some point. And again, we want to make sure that that consistency is across the board, and that those employees feel valued.
What are a few ways HR pros can modify their hiring processes to embody civility and inclusivity?
I think it's just is doing the assessment, is doing the work of taking a step back to make sure before anyone is interviewed, before anyone walks through the doors, that they are truly having a healthy culture, a civil culture, if you will. Again, because the main crust of civility is making sure our employees feel heard, respected, and valued. And so every candidate I bring in, are they heard, respected, and valued? And that's a template that can carry through every department to make sure it's brought forth, if you will.
And how can HR professionals best communicate their organization's cultural values to prospective employees?
Yeah, I always say it's not what's on the website. It can't just be a buzzword. Culture cannot just be a buzzword. It has to be lived out through every experience. And I say to everyone, everybody's a leader. So every person as a part of the process, from recruitment to onboarding to getting into the role, has a part to play. And they are, again, have to live the mission and vision statement out loud. And not just, we got to walk the talk the walk, walk the walk, walk the talk.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. Every organization has mission and vision statement, guiding principles, if you will, that help form what their day-to-day looks like. And it goes beyond that to actually live it day in and day out. And, as you said, pulling it through the interview process for sure.
Another thing is really making sure that people are aware of how they show up. Right? Are you emotionally aware of how you show up, whether it's an interview or into the organization? I often task leaders with assessing themselves, their energy, their different levels of energy, because energy, it talks, whether we open our mouths or not. It's going to speak a message of, do I value or not? Do I respect you or not? And so being aware of that is crucial.
Yeah, I think the self-awareness piece is really important, and demonstrating civility and inclusivity in an interview process could be, it's really simple, right? Being respectful of the candidate's time, showing up on time for the interview. The candidate will show up dressed to the nines. They're on time. If not early, they're ready to go. And then you might have a hiring manager who shows up to the interview 10, 15 minutes late, or they're not present, right? They're checking their phone, they're getting distracted. Those are little things that can be a cue to a candidate, like, hey, if they're not paying attention to me now, are they going to pay attention to me and give me the respect that I deserve when I'm an employee?
Yeah. Those micro messages, and they can, again, have a big positive effect or a negative one. And it's very telling for sure.
And it certainly goes back to, earlier in our conversation, you've said your strength is training and development, and certainly the training and developing our people managers to make sure that they have that self-awareness and presence, again, starting with the interview process and then living out your organization's values and how they engage with employees every day is critical.
It's critical. And I always say there's a cost. And so there's a cost for when we don't implement these things, and there's a cost when, we do. We want the positive cost, though. We don't want the negative ones, because it is a cost to recruit, to retain, and to develop. But there's a cost to re-recruit. The evolving door. I worked at a former company. I won't say no names, but it was a revolving door where the recruiters were constantly having to hire people for those same positions. Why? There was some not civility taking place. People who really didn't feel valued. So we're trying to change that game.
What role does a workplace culture of civility play in conflict management?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. There will be less conflict, and I would say less negative conflict, because I don't believe that all conflict is bad, and it's sometimes necessary for growth and development. But for a civil organizational culture, conflict can be dissolved really quickly. In fact, I'm going to be sharing, I call it my hot sauce framework on how to have necessary conversations, which can be deemed uncomfortable, can be deemed, confrontational, but it shouldn't be in a healthy culture. And so in my framework, I talk about, it's called REMC. And so it's respect, empathy, maturity, and then curiosity. I believe wholeheartedly that any conversation can happen when those elements are in the room by both parties. And so let's say, for example, you find that, not even an example, a story of, I was working with a group of professors at a university, and there was a professor who really who said out loud that if the candidates do not graduate from a Harvard, then they're not a good candidate. So they struck down the entire group of candidates coming in for that more than qualified experience level. But they said if they don't graduate from Harvard, I don't want them a part of our team. And so we had to do, of course, some good bias training to ask those necessary questions. And so that's when we put the REMC framework into action to say, hey, let's first be curious. Why do you feel that way? oh, because it's your experience. So your limited experience has told you the best candidates come from Harvard University. And they said, well, I never thought of that. I never thought about that. I said, oh, well, here's a good time, right? But it was such, the approach is everything. And so if you're coming to someone with necessary information that a necessary conversation needs to take place, you got to make sure you come respectfully. Try to be empathetic, hear their side, their version, their experience, because you want to get an understanding. We're seeking to understand during this whole process, and then being mature enough not to react, even if you're offended, but being able to work through that, because we have an end goal of hiring the best candidate for this role. That's what it's all about. And so in times of conflict like that, you just need to make sure that those elements are in the space so it can be successful.
Yeah. Well, I love the idea of the framework of REMC. It assumes positive intent. It also kind of makes the person who's initiating the coaching conversation kind of check themselves too and reframe, even if, they're upset by or frustrated by the other person's thought process. You kind of reframe it and get yourself prepared for that conversation that is, it is conflict, but as you said, not all conflict is bad.
Yeah.
At SHRM, we have a guiding principle called challenge, decide, commit. And so we give ourselves permission to disagree, and we can have that healthy dialogue. But ultimately, once we come to the decision, we agree to move forward.
Yes. And that's it. It's necessary. And I call them necessary conversations versus uncomfortable or confrontational conversations, because it's a conversation that needs to happen. If you have an interview committee and there is bias at play, it needs to be called forward. So that way you can move forward. I remember a HR director text me. It was a 911 text this time. And she said, Kinston, I had a interview panel and someone said that we shouldn't hire this person because they came from this certain school district. Now, this school district they referring to is the largest school district in the state. And I said, well, they had a limited experience with someone from the school district, and they've made a decision from that. That's problematic. And so let's get in there and have some necessary conversations. And we did, and they were able to see that, I never want to call out people, but I want to call them in. Because if we call them in, then they're most likely their defense systems are going to come down, and then we're going to have a productive conversation, a necessary one. So
yeah, and you talked about having necessary conversations, which I love. Oftentimes when I coach people managers, it's coaching them through a conversation that will make them uncomfortable. And sometimes people managers will avoid those conversations. It could be something really small because it makes them uncomfortable. And to me, having that uncomfortable conversation is part of being a people manager, because ultimately it's people managers' responsibilities, it's HR professionals' responsibility to develop their teams, get them to success. And so by having those necessary conversations, that can really help someone shift their career in a very different way. Just those very simple moments, right?
Absolutely.
And so how can HR professionals effectively engage employees in contributing to more inclusive workplaces? And what role does this dialogue play in the process?
Yeah, I think it's having the open dialogue. It is, like, for example, I was working with an organization and I gave them a question, and a question was simply, hey, let's talk about your work experiences, how you got to where you are to current day. And these people have been working together for 5 years and more, but they've never had that question asked to them. And so when they started talking, I seen some of the facial expressions and some of the energy go down and sideways. And I said, well, hold on, let's talk this out loud. And I knew it was going to bring some tension. But it came out to say that some people had access to coaches or mentors or sponsors, and others did not. And they were wondering, why didn't they get those opportunities? And so, but it turned into a beautiful conversation and learning as people leaned into it. And it allowed the, leaders to say, you know what, we got to fix some things. There's some things we need to work on. But it was beautiful for them to engage in that type of dialogue, because they knew that they knew it was already a good place to work, but it became even a better place to work because they were able to have that open, honest dialogue, and it was able to work through those things. And so I really feel that, leaders, if we're walking the walk, it's walking the talk, then we're able to help our employees and our team members engage in these fruitful discussions.
What are 2 to 3 pieces of advice you'd give HR professionals who want to get started in fostering a civil and inclusive culture? And how might they get buy-in from leadership?
Yeah. A lot of things that has transpired over the last several years that has stuck around and that's sticking with organizations I'm working with is called listening sessions. Listening sessions is just simply you going to lunch with someone differently than you, and being able to just have conversations, getting to know you type of conversations, not being afraid to step outside of your comfort zone, which is your core group of colleagues, but sitting with other people and just having a good conversation. Also being intentional about the things that you do as a department or as an organization. Getting out and volunteering in different capacities will help build camaraderie, will help build your team of well-rounded individuals who are not just stuck in, I would say, sometimes our bubbles. And so those are a couple of things I would encourage people to do.
It certainly can be easy to forget that people are people outside of work and, beyond what their day-to-day job is. So getting to see them in their element, perhaps, working out in the community or taking them to lunch, getting them outside of those 4 walls can certainly get to that.
Absolutely. And you got to be intentional with it. It just, because if you're not, it won't happen. You won't push yourself. I mean, if you don't nudge yourself, it won't happen because comfort. We're creatures of comfort. But if you desire to be even more civil and inclusive, then we will take those necessary steps.
Is there anything else you'd want to share about civility, recruitment, retention we haven't talked about today?
People don't leave organizations. They leave the department's culture. And so the overall organization can have a good culture, but each department has a different culture. And so it's so important that, from top down, from top to middle management, to supervisor, first level management, to our employees, it has to be carried through the message of the culture you desire to have. It can't just stay at the top, or it can't just stay at the bottom, but it has to work in congruent in order for it to be most impactful.
And that's a really good point. I think about prospective employee looking up a Glassdoor profile on an organization, and the organization might get great reviews, but then you've got that one department where there's these consistent messages that are very different from the balance of the organization. And so how can HR professionals help address those unique cultures within a culture? Absolutely.
And so as HR, we can see those trends, right? We can see the trends through systems. Definitely our HRIS systems will tell the tale. Our recruitment systems will tell the tale of how many openings or consistent openings are taking place within that department. But so having that necessary conversation with that hire manager to really get the information that's needed to say, hey, how can I help? How can we help? Is there a specific development program that we can put you in, or have your team go through some type of team building, something to make sure that we are cultivating a healthy and inclusive culture?
Yeah. Well, having a a REMC conversation with them.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely. That's the perfect time to put it in place, because it puts more work on you, but it also looks bad on the organization as a whole.
Yeah.
And so I always say I'm big on branding. If one piece is out of alignment, it can then affect everyone else too. So
yeah. Well, and actually that's a great point, which is, fostering that culture of civility and inclusivity that allows you to control your employer brand.
yes.
Whereas if you don't have that culture of civility and inclusivity, someone else is telling the story of your brand.
Yep. And now we got tools like ChatGPT that will tell it all. And I always joke around, but even in my presentations, I do live AI, and how an employee who is disgruntled can use that tool and post that to a Glassdoor or post it to a job board, because they're that limited experience. It may not be the organization whole experience, but that one department can be very, very bad. So.
Well, that's going to do it for this week's episode of Honest HR. A big thank you to Kenston for sharing his deep insights with us. Honest HR is part of SHRM's HR Daily flagship content series. Head to shrm.org/HR Daily to learn more and to sign up for the daily newsletter. You can also catch us on SHRM's social media. You can like, comment, and be part of the conversation. Thank you for joining, and see you next time.
SHRM.
This podcast is approved for 0.5 professional development credits, aka PDCs, towards SHRM CP and SHRM SCP recertification. Enter the following PDC activity ID in your SHRM activity portal to log your credit: 26AUFAE. That's 26AUFAE. This ID expires on May 1st, 2026.